Hello. That building that you just saw is Charles Thompson Memorial Hall. This hall is located in St. Paul, Minnesota. The building does have its own abbreviation, and it is fingerspelled as TH. How does the case of Thompson Hall have something that relates to us? This is where I'll tell our story next. A group of us went to Minnesota for a sign language conference in Minneapolis, Minnesota. We stayed at the conference for a few days. One day, my group and I wanted to go around and view the architecture work of Olaf Hansen, the famous deaf architect. It's like how individuals who are interested in Lloyd Wright's architecture work and they would visit his buildings. Wright is a famous architect and his work became popular for the visitation sites. Similar to Wright, Olaf's work is appealing to deaf people. Anyway, we wanted to visit his works, and there were so many. There was about 30 of them. So we decided to narrow it down to four. There is one of his works that received a recognition from the Minnesota Historical Society. Based on this prestigious recognition, we decided to go there and see it. As I was driving around in St. Paul, we saw houses on the street, but recognized a big building on the corner of the street, which was one of Olaf Hansen's work. We drove up around the corner and thought, wow, this is nice, and we parked on site. We were walking around outside, admiring the design and architecture, which is recognized by the state of Minnesota. Some of our group told me that we could go in. I thought, how wonderful. We were admiring the work from the inside, looking around, when we were stunned and happened to realize it was a deaf club. We got a tour of the building, socialized, and ended up staying there for 4 hours. It was really amazing. Speaking of Thompson Hall, it is important for us to understand what the term hall meant in the past. It is like a prestigious place that has an auditorium, that hosts banquets, meeting sites that people attended. It is a one stop place where all deaf people attended. This is how the hall was designed. At that time, the expenses for building this hall were quite expensive, around $45,000. In the year of 1916, $45,000 is computed as $1.3 million in the present day. Olaf Hansen was the architect at that time, and he designed this hall. He was a good friend of Charles Thompson. Olaf's work was part of a gift to Thompson's family, which means it was designed at no cost. Also, it was his gift to all deaf people who use sign language, and this hall served as a haven where individuals were allowed to use sign language for decades. This hall is one of Olaf Hansen's masterpieces as it was designed with wide-spaced stairs, bright lights, and open spaces for conversations for people who sit or stand. This hall's architect work became a model for the world to follow, where most of the deaf clubs worldwide were influenced by it. I would like to add more about Mr. Hanson as he is really an interesting person. He was once president of the National Association of the Deaf. When he was president, he felt that deaf and hearing people nationwide should learn sign language and decided to write a letter to Alexander Graham Bell expressing his concerns. Dr. Bell never responded to his letter, but he mentioned to someone else that Mr. Hanson's idea for having everyone learning sign language is impossible to accomplish in this given society. However, Mr. Hanson was persistent about it and continued pursuing his vision that one day all deaf people and hearing people would use sign language as part of their lives. Hi, my name is Douglas Ball. Welcome to the deaf clubhouse called Charles Thompson Memorial Hall, located here in St. Paul, Minnesota. This deaf clubhouse is very old, dating back to 1916. This building is owned by the deaf for the deaf. Let's go in. This is the first floor. The deaf man who designed this building was named Olaf Hansen. During his time, most of the buildings were Victorian style, influenced by many architects. Hansen was a more modern style architect, as you can see by these rails. It is more like arts and crafts, which is influenced by Stickley and other famous architects. Houses designed by hearing people were typically built with narrow hallways, but he designed them wide so that deaf people would have their own space where they can walk up side by side while conversing with sign. We really appreciate that. As you will see, deaf clubs became a very important place for deaf people's lives. As you may notice, Thompson Hall is named after a deaf man named Charles Thompson. He came from a wealthy family who had a large amount of money. He died at a young age. He was married to a deaf lady named Margaret. When he died, Margaret became thoughtful for deaf people and decided to build a hall where deaf people could get together and socialize at the Deaf Club. There is a quote that I would like to share. As you can see, the quote was developed by a deaf man named Henry, who argued that this quote reflected deaf people's view of deaf clubs as an oasis. It is a haven for deaf people where they need to use sign language to communicate. Frequently, deaf people call the Deaf Club their second home. This pool table was located at Charles Thompson's home, which deaf people frequently went to. When he died, his wife decided to put it in the basement of this building. This room used to be the women's room, called the parlor room. When pool became less popular, they were not sure what to do with it. They found it to be very valuable, so they decided to bring it up here with the help of 12 men. It has been here ever since and is a beautiful part of history. Take a look at the lion sculpture. These sketches on the wall were done by Cadwallader Washburn from Minnesota. He went to school with Charles Thompson, and the two of them were best friends growing up. When Cadwallader Washburn graduated, he went to Gallaudet and through experience became a famous etcher. A few of his works were donated after Thompson died. They are unique and vintage. Charles Thompson was born here in St. Paul in 1864. His parents had a lot of money. His father set up a bank here as well as being involved with the train and insurance business. His family was wealthy. Charles Thompson attended and graduated from the Minnesota School from the Deaf at Faribault. His father wanted to hand over the farm to Charles, but he didn't want it. He never worked in his life and always had fun. He also enjoyed attending parties with deaf people. When Charles Thompson died, his wife decided to set up the clubhouse. They did not have any children, so a lot of their money came to the clubhouse. That's why we are lucky to have the clubhouse. The Thompson's family kindness and donation to the clubhouse is what we have now. Without his wife's generosity from her heart, we would not have this clubhouse. This here is the basement. It used to be a bowling alley until about 9 years ago. Now it is more social. A long time ago, it used to be just for men to play cards and they would chew tobacco and spit in buckets along with cigars. The women were upstairs, but now everyone is down here interacting. This artwork represents deaf people from Minneapolis, St. Paul who come to this deaf club. It is unique because there is no member charge ever since 1916. People can just come in. It is the only deaf club in the United States with no membership charge. But the people do have a voice. Everyone comes together for a meeting every year called Mass Meeting on the third Saturday of January. That's when people vote to choose a new chair of events, secretary, and even suggest new ideas to improve this establishment without any charge. Thanks to Margaret Thompson for the way we make money and keep the building running. She was the one who started investing money in a trust fund. She also created a dividend stock in order to maintain and continue the use of the building. But today, costs are steadily increasing, so we do ask for donations. People do give us monetary donations, which is really wonderful and appreciated. My relationship with Thompson Hall is very deep. I grew up there, and it is pretty much half of my life, so I feel it is my second home. My father is heavily involved with athletics such as softball, basketball, scorekeeper, and other different roles. Thus, the Deaf Club was the key place for the athletes to have meetings and became the site to place their awards and trophies. We did not get together only for athletics, but we got together for everything else. It led to other reasons for the gatherings, such as potlucks, movie nights, and other activities. This hall became an infrastructure for different events. While growing up at the Deaf Club, one of my best memories was having the potluck events. This type of event was amazing. When someone needs help, almost everyone will bring their dishes to the table. I can remember myself as a girl standing beside the table looking at a variety of dishes from meats, sides, to desserts. In the past, most of the ladies were housewives and they brought their old fashioned home recipes. Every dish was very heavy and delicious, which made everyone full after eating them. We were not being lazy as we stayed all night chatting and catching up with our news. I have recently noticed that other deaf clubs are becoming smaller and smaller. Here at Charles Thompson Memorial Hall, there is no membership fee and we welcome everyone. Though we don't know the future, we will continue to keep this club running even if our members decrease. We will be having a huge celebration in 2016. Come look at our deaf club. I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and graduated from Western Pennsylvania School for the Deaf in 1983. When comparing the two deaf clubhouses, the clubhouse here is really nice, such as having free admission. Over there in Pittsburgh, you have to pay for membership and pay extra when you visit their clubhouse. The clubhouse is nicer here. They have 2 floors there, whereas we have 3. Also, we have an auditorium and a bar where you can drink and play cards, and the list goes on. I'm originally from Indiana, but I married a man from Minnesota. This dev clubhouse here is very different than the one in Indiana. It had 1 floor, and I'm not sure about the square floor, but when you walk in, the stage is to the right, straight ahead is the bar, and to the left is the bathroom. It's really small. If many deaf people came, they would stay outside. While this deaf clubhouse has 3 different floors, it is indeed a beautiful design and is very impressive. The building in Indiana was just a regular building, which is completely different from this clubhouse. I'm really impressed with this clubhouse. Comparing to other deaf clubs I attended, I'm really impressed with this beautiful design and its history. There is lots of history behind this building regarding its design and architecture. It is beautiful. I really like this place as compared to most of the deaf clubs I attended. Comparing here to Chicago, it is fascinating here with free membership, the building itself, and how a deaf couple actually built this hall as a gift to deaf people. In Chicago, their deaf club is financially tight with their funding. Their club is starting to close down. However, it is unique here as the building is going to be 100 years old in 2016. It is a very nice building with free admission where we can socialize, play cards, doing all different things on the activity list over there. The list includes the events that keep us active through socializing where everyone learned different things from each other. I think it is important for all of us to listen to a story about a deaf lady who grew up using the oralism approach, which means that her parents, teachers, and school administrators do not support the use of sign language. That is how she grew up and let her share her experience. Her story includes how Thompson Hall made an impact on her life. When I was 35 years old, I started to come to Thompson Hall and learn sign language little by little. It wasn't until 4 years ago when I became a regular here. I decided to learn sign language because I wanted to understand deaf culture with American Sign Language. Why didn't I learn sign language when growing up? I am trying to figure that answer for myself along the way. I have realized we are all human. My parents made the decision for me, and it is not my fault. That is how I learned sign language from here. Thank you, Thompson Hall, for everything. It is fantastic. I read a statement that I believe is an important perspective based on Thompson's life growing up. He patiently entered school and stayed there all day. When the school hours were over, he quickly exited the classroom and socialized by playing with his classmates. His personality was strongly associated to the club as he enjoyed socializing with other deaf people. This is where the stories were shared. What that means is that deaf clubs must be established to provide the home for deaf people. In 1916, the proliferation of using sign language became important in their lives. Hi, my name is Doug Ball, and I represent the Minnesota Association for the Deaf Citizens MADC Board, also the chair of the Minnesota Deaf History Council that recently established. Mr. Ball holds a special place in my heart as a historian. The reason for this is because he had collected a lot of information related to the Thompson family and Olaf Hansen and his architect works. He was heavily involved with making sure that their works and information about the Deaf Club did not disappear. Lots of information related to deaf history has disappeared. Thanks to him for his contributions, as we still have the wealth of information on this topic for the future generations, using this documentary as an example. His achievements led us to research deaf history. It is a good model to show how we can preserve our history. Mr. Ball is a true visionary leader in regards to history preservation. His passing will be greatly missed by all of us.